Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is print. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you're likely to hear print used is to mean to produce text, images, or designs in large quantities by a mechanical process. So this is something that happens every day. There are companies that are printing and making books, magazines, newspapers, and you see a combination of words, images, or pictures in that resulting product. A second way you'll hear print used is to mean to produce a paper copy of text or images that are stored on a computer. So again, this is another really common task that people do through the course of their workday. They might make copies of items in order for them to be signed or to be stored or filed. A third way you might hear the verb print used is to mean to write text clearly without joining the letters. So if you're familiar with cursive writing, that's where we join the letters together. But here, the idea is that we're writing more clearly and trying to make it look like the letters you might see produced by a computer or typewriter. A fourth way to use the verb print is to mean to fix something firmly in one's mind. Sometimes it's a particular image or event that we have witnessed, and we have said that it's like it has been printed or sort of saved in our memory. So you might hear certain people saying things like this reaction or this event was printed into my memory. You should know that print is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing to form printing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made by adding ed. Our base verb print ends with a T sound, so our past tense ending is going to make an id sound. We're going to add an extra syllable to this verb. So our past tense and participle forms should sound like this. Printed, printed. Hopefully you can hear that extra syllable being added to the verb. Now, there are a couple phrasal verbs that are used with print. You might hear someone say print in, and this generally means to, again, write where we are not connecting the letters and doing that in a particular area or space. An example of that could be, please print your first name in the first box. So maybe someone is walking you through a particular application or form and they give you this direction. So again, they want you to write letters that look like what you might see if you're typing. They don't want you to use cursive in that particular area. Another phrasal verb you might hear is print out. This generally means make a hard copy, make a paper copy of some computer file or document. Another example sentence with this would be print out the letter, sign it, and then mail it before the end of the day. Right? So here, this idea print out is meaning make a hard copy from the form that has been saved, likely on a computer. Now let's continue using our verb of the day, print. And today we're going to focus on making a request. So asking someone to do something for us or for another person, right? So we're asking them to take a particular action. Now you're going to see there are a number of different ways to do this. Some are considered a little less polite, and then we'll work up to maybe the most polite form. But it's important for you to know as we do this, we can add please to things, and that usually makes things a bit more polite. So let's start with our less polite requests. To do this, we can use either the modals can or will. So we'll use one of those two words, not both, just can or will. Then we'll have our subject and then the base verb. I've got two examples here. Can you print your name on this application? So here that would again mean write without connecting the letters, or will you print your name on this application? Both of these are fine. And it's okay in some instances to be a little less formal. And if it's easy for you to remember this though, and you want to be a little more polite, you could say, can you please print your name on this application? Or you could say, can you print your name on this application, please? So we can put the please before the base verb or at the end of the question. And that's true whether we're using can or will. Now, if someone were to ask you this particular question or make this request of you, if you want to answer affirmatively or positively, right, you could say sure, certainly. You might hear people say of course. You might hear them say something like no problem or I'd be glad to. All of those are fine ways to say yes. Now, if for some reason you weren't able to do the action that is requested, you could say, I'm sorry, but I can't. You might hear some people say, I'm afraid I can't. All of those are fine. Important to note though, with our negative answers, notice I'm using can't. I'm not using will not or won't. So use the modal there in the negative, the can't. Okay, let's make our request a little more polite. Okay, here we're going to follow the same pattern and structure, but we're going to use the modals could and would. Okay, so we'll pick one of those, and then again we have our subject and then our base verb. An example of this: could you print 10 copies for the meeting? Would you print 10 copies for the meeting? Both of those have the exact same meaning. And again, if you wanted to just increase the politeness of those requests, we could say, could you please print 10 copies for the meeting? Or would you print 10 copies for the meeting, please? So I can use the word please in one of those two locations in the question, but I don't need to say it 2 times or in 2 places. You'll notice here our answers to these requests of could and would are exactly the same as can and will, right? So we can say sure, certainly, of course, no problem, I'd be glad to. And notice we're still using the modal cannot in our negative. I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm afraid I can't. Okay. Finally, let's look at making sort of the most polite request we could. And our structure here is a little different. So we're going to start off with, would you mind? And then we use the gerund form or the ing form of the verb. Would you mind printing your children's names on the form? Okay, so again, the structure might seem funny, but we have this would, we have our subject. Many times this type of request is going to be made in person or face to face. So would, subject, mind, and then the ing form of the verb. Now, what sometimes seems a little bit funny or weird is our affirmative answers are going to be not at all. So what I'm saying there is I do not mind. It is not a bother. And some of the other ways to express kind of an agreement with the request is of course not, I'd be glad to, no problem. And you'll notice our negative answers here, again, all the same. I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm afraid I can't. I will note, some students have asked in the past, could I say yes? Yes, I mind. That is likely going to be received as being a bit rude. And so maybe if it's a very close friend and you can joke and kid around a bit, you could say, yes, I mind. But I would not recommend that when you're talking to someone in a professional setting or even in a school setting. So I would stick to those, I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm afraid I can't. because those are very polite negative answers. Now, let's spend just a few minutes looking at words that are related to our verb print. The first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. So we have the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. The noun print can mean the text that you see in a book, in a newspaper, a magazine, etc. Okay? An example of this, look at the words in bold print. And bold is something I use often in my notes. So I'm going to point out here on the screen here, related words print. This is in bold. You can see the letters are a little thicker and darker in color. Okay, that's what's meant by that phrase, bold print. A second way to use the noun print is to refer to the state of being available in published form. An example of this is the question, is that book still in print, right? Is it being produced so that I can buy it or find it? Maybe if I'm looking just to borrow it for a while. A third way we might hear print, the noun used, is to refer to a mark that's been left on a surface or some sort of substance, and that usually comes from having some pressure, something pushing down. An example of this, and something you might know well if you have pets, there were paw prints all over the floor. So there were these marks on the surface of the floor where we could see maybe the dog had walked. Maybe they're a bit muddy or dirty. A fourth way to use the noun print is to refer to a picture or a design that has been printed and copied from a painting or a photo. An example of this, she bought a new colo print for her living room. So this is very common because having like the real piece of art that an artist created for the very first time can be extremely expensive, but you might still really like and appreciate it, so you can have this copy or print made. Another related noun that you might hear is printer. This can have a couple of meanings as well. One is referring to the machine that is used to print texts or pictures onto paper. An example of this noun in a sentence would be, does the printer need more ink? Okay, that's a common issue if you're using printers a lot, running out of ink. A second way to use that noun is to refer to a person or maybe even a company whose job or its business is to commercially print things. So they have really fancy machines, printers, that can produce a great number of copies in a very short time, much different than the printer you might have at home or even at work. So an example of this usage in a sentence could be, which printer do they use, referring to the company or organization. The last phrase that I want us to look at today is to read the fine print. Okay, so here print is being used as a noun, but this phrase here, fine print, generally means that there are some unfavorable conditions, and they might be in very, very small letters, small size, that are included in some sort of agreement or contract. And many people just, whenever they get something, they sign without looking at it, without reading it. And that can be a bit dangerous. You don't know what you've just agreed to. So some advice many people receive would be, in our example sentence here, you should read the fine print before signing the credit card application. So here you need to know what kind of fees, extra charges there could be, penalties, what's your interest rate. All of that is likely to be very small, but yet extremely important to you as well. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.